Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the chapter goals for leadership teams. So part of the goal planning 101 process that's been developed in BNI is to be able to help chapters to establish goals for the next 6 months or the next year, and then to be able to kind of track those goals throughout the year. Traditionally, this was always done on paper, but with BNI Connect, we do have a module within the system that allows you to do this for your chapter. And the great thing is that it will automatically populate the results as the year goes on. So we're going to take a look at that today, how to input the goals and some strategies for doing so. Couple of housekeeping things before we get started, and that is that this is a live webinar. So as we're going through the material today, please do ask questions. I love answering questions. You can ask questions by typing those questions into the questions box here in the GoToWebinar software. I'll see those questions pop up on the screen and I can answer them right away. We are scheduled for about 30 minutes worth of content. That being said, if you have questions, I am always happy to hang on for as long as you have questions until every single question is answered. So please do know that I will take as much time as necessary to make sure that you guys go away from this webinar with as much information as possible. The webinar is also being recorded. You'll be able to find that recording in one of two places. The first place is on the BNI Connect support site. You can get to the support site by clicking on this question mark here in the upper right-hand corner. Right below the options button, there is a question mark. That will take you over to the support site, which is support.bniconnect.com. Right below our listing of webinars, you'll see Chapter Training and Documentation. Under Chapter Training and Documentation, you'll see the recorded webinars. Take a look through those, and you'll be able to review any of those webinars that were previously recorded. And you'll see the September ones uploaded probably towards the end of the month. You'll also be able to go to youtube.com. That's where all of these videos are hosted. And up on the YouTube channel, we have, of course, the recorded webinars. We have some special presentations by Dr. Meisner, and we have a whole series of educational moments as well. So short 3 to 5 minute videos on very specific topics in BNI Connect. All right, so let's talk about today's topic, which is, again, the chapter goals for leadership teams. So the chapter goals are going to be located in the operations. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, I don't know where to find stuff in BNI Connect. I don't know where to go to do things. Well, most of you are going to see Network, Operations, and Reports up here at the top. Network, Operations, and Reports. Network is all of the social media functions. That's where you'll go for the connections and the discussion groups and things of that nature. Operations is where you go to input things. That's where our tools are going to be located. If we're going to be entering POMS reports, if we're going to be doing the speaker rotation, and as a leadership team, if we're going to be entering our goals, that's where we would go. Reports, on the other hand, are where we get the information back out of BNI Connect. So reports is output. Operations is input. So to input our chapter goals, we're going to go to Operations, and we're going to go to the chapter level. Once here, you'll see a number of different functions, but where we want to go to is Manage Goals. So Manage Goals, by the way, this function is available to leadership team members. Some people that are on the call today, you may be incoming leadership team for October 1st. You may or may not be able to access this function directly now, but once you become a president or a vice president or secretary treasurer, or if you're from the UK, you would be a chapter director or a membership coordinator, then you should see these functions pop up once that role has been assigned. But to get there, we're going to go to Manage Goals. And if we'd like to start entering our goals into the system, we're going to click on Enter Chapter Goals. So again, that's Operations, Manage Goals, Enter Chapter Goals. We do have a quick question here from John. John said, what is TYFCB? So TYFCB is thank you for closed business. So that's the result of a referral. So if I was to, let's say, John, that you referred me a new piece of business, I was able to complete that sale and it turned into revenue for my business. What I would do is then thank you for generating that money for my business. Let's say it was $500 or $1,000. I would submit a thank you for closed business slip. You would be credited for generating that amount of money for my business. So does that answer your question, John? All right, so now that we've clicked on Enter Chapter Goals, the first thing that we need to do is to come up with the start month, the long-term vision, and the mission statement. So the start month is, when do you want to start planning your goals for? Now, by default, it's going to give you the next 6-month period of time. We can establish our goals in blocks of 6 months at a time. We traditionally do this as per the schedule here in BNI, where we have changeovers in October and in April, but you can actually start from any month that you would like to. You just need to choose it from the drop-down list. Or if, let's say, you've already established the next 6-month goals and you want to work on the 6 months after that, you could do that as well. The next thing is the long-term vision. The long-term vision is, where do you want to get to? What's your BHAG, if you will, your big, hairy, audacious goals for this chapter? This isn't going to be in terms necessarily of specific numbers, but more of a general vision of where you want to get to. Now, up here in Antarctica, in my Shiver region, our goal for the Burr chapter is that we want to grow the chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent. In addition, we wish to be the #1 chapter in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So that's our long-term vision for the Burr chapter. For yourself, that's going to be whatever you want your chapter to get to. Now, the mission statement is really the way that you're going to get there. So what code of ethics, so to speak, for your chapter are you going to adhere to along the way? Now, our mission statement here for the Burr chapter is that we want to become the largest chapter by helping members to increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals and create positive community goodwill. So that's our what we want to do and how we're going to get there. The next part of what we're going to do is we're going to start establishing the metrics and the details of what we want to do. So based on your start month, once you click the Go button, this is then going to bring up basically a spreadsheet that we can start to fill out for what our goals are going to be and the different mechanisms for how we're going to get there. You'll see that this is broken up into the months along the top here, and then the different chapter success drivers along the way. So basically the different things that we're going to be measuring for our chapter. Now, those things are attendance percentage, total number of one-to-ones, CEUs, visitors, new memberships, total number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and thank you for closed business. So these are all the different things we're going to be measuring on a month-by-month basis. Now, within each of these success drivers, you'll see that there's 3 different things that we can fill out. The first of which is our overall goal. What is the goal that we want to get to for each of these success drivers? The second 2 things are mechanisms. You have the opportunity to put up to 2 mechanisms into each of the different chapter success drivers. Mechanisms are really what we're doing is we're planning out our leadership term for different things that we can do with our chapter in order to achieve those goals. So now I happen to be a member. I've been a member of BNI for about 12 years now, since 2002. I've also held just about every leadership team position for the chapter. I'm just currently the chapter president. I'll be switching out of that role on October 1st. But over the years as a long-term member in and out of the leadership team, sometimes we go into these leadership terms and we kind of have a vague idea of where we want to get to, but on a week-by-week basis, we kind of just show up and we conduct our meeting, and maybe we have a leadership team meeting, and then something happens. The rest of the week happens, and we kind of forget to do some of the things that we wanted to do. What this helps you to do is to plan out your term so that you can better achieve those goals. So let's take a look at what this means. Now, here's a strategy that I have for filling out your goals. Now, when you first see this, this is most likely going to be all empty. So let me clear this out so that nothing is listed here. So when you first start out, you're going to see a bunch of blank fields here. My recommendation for you is to begin with the end in mind. So we kind of know where we are right now. We can do that. We can go look at the PALMS report, let's say, and we kind of know where we want to get to. So what I like to do is I like to start with the end in mind. So looking 6 months out, where do we want to get to? Now, my goal for this chapter is that we want to get to 100% attendance. So I'm going to put in a goal of 100%. Now, I also know that in our chapter, our attendance rate is about 85%. So how do I want to start that out? Now, hopefully, let's say I'm just taking over the leadership team on October 1st. We're at 85% right now, and probably by the end of the month, I would like to get that up to, let's say, 87%. Now, if I want to get to 100%, I'm probably not going to jump up all the way in 1 month. So I want to kind of break this apart. So that's going to bring me up about 13 points over 6 months. So I can probably move up, let's say, by 2 to 3 points a month. So maybe by November, I'm going to get to 90% attendance, and then maybe to 93% attendance, and then maybe 96% attendance, then maybe 98% attendance, and then up to 100. So I'm working my goal up incrementally as the months progress. Now, when it comes to mechanisms, what we can do is come up with ideas for supporting that goal. Now, when it comes to attendance percentage, we want to look at things that will help with attendance. So what are some things that could help to drive the attendance percentage? Well, one thing might be that, in the previous administration, maybe the vice president wasn't always sending out the control letters if somebody missed 2 meetings. So that's something that I want to make sure that the vice president is doing going forward, is making sure that the control letters are sent out. So maybe one of these mechanisms is the control letters. And maybe something else I can do in November would be to have the educational coordinator do an educational moment on the importance of attendance. So maybe we do an educational moment on attendance. Then looking at November, maybe what are some things that we can do in November? In November and December, we start having some holidays. So we have, for example, Thanksgiving, we'll have Christmas, we'll have Hanukkah, we'll have New Year's, we'll have all of these holidays that get jumbled in. So maybe one thing that we want to do is make sure that people understand the importance of a substitute during those times. So we want to make sure we do, let's say, an educational moment on substitutes. And maybe we want to plan a a joint meeting. If our meeting day happens to fall on Thanksgiving, my chapter happens to meet on Thursdays. Now, in my region, we don't like to skip meetings, so maybe we want to move our meeting from the Thursday of Thanksgiving, and we want to have a joint meeting with another chapter that meets on a Tuesday, for example. Well, that's something we do need to plan out, and I want to remind myself of that. So, joint meeting for September, for Thanksgiving. So these are all things that you can put in to support those goals of attendance. Now, attendance is a whole chapter goal. One thing I do want to point out that I skipped over in the beginning, and I apologize for this, is that when you are coming up with your goals, you do have an option of how you want those goals to be calculated, either as an entire chapter goal, which is how I generally do it and how most people do it, but you can also choose to enter your goals on a per member basis. Now, this does make a difference in how we're calculating out the numbers here in BNI Connect. Now, when we look at the for the whole chapter goals, when we're entering our goals, we're putting in the total number of that particular metric for the entire month. So when we're looking at, for example, total number of one-to-ones, we can come up with our goal of, when we look at the monthly POMS report, what is the total number of one-to-ones that we want to have for the chapter? Now, if you'd like to, you can do that per member as well. Now, the per member ones are calculated out by per member per week. So the difference would be that instead of putting in a total chapter goal of 80 one-to-ones, I would put in, let's say, a goal of 1 one-to-one per member per week. Now, when it does calculate it out, the thing to keep in mind is it will calculate it out by the total number of members that are your goal for the chapter and by the number of weeks in the month. So when we're looking at the review of this, you would see, for in this example, if there are 4 weeks in November, it would be 4 times 22 for the number of members that you want to have in the chapter. So that would be 88. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I do find it easier to go with the whole chapter numbers, and that's what I'm going to leave this one on. Martha has a question. She says, I was having trouble getting on. I was listening but didn't see how you got to this page. Can you quickly review? Absolutely. What you want to do is go to Operations Chapter. So again, Operations Chapter. And once you get there, you're going to go to Manage Goals and then Enter Chapter Goals. So Operations Chapter, Manage Goals, Enter Chapter Goals. And Laura has a question. Jeremy, can only our chapter members see our goals, or is it viewable by all who are on BNI Connect? Laura, only your chapter can see your goals. From a chapter member level standpoint. Of course, your regional office, meaning your director consultant, your executive director, they would also have access to be able to see your goals. So from a member standpoint, only your members in your region, only your members from your chapter can see the goals, except if you're a director consultant or part of the regional team, they could see those goals as well. Excellent. So when we come to the first metric that involves, again, total number of one-to-ones. So again, we want to begin with the end in mind. So I know right now we have, one of our goals is to make sure that all of our chapter members are doing one-to-one per member per week. We call it the power of one. So when we're calculating out our total number of one-to-ones, I know that we have about 22 members in the chapter right now. And if we're looking at doing one-to-one per week, we're looking at approximately 88 total number of one-to-ones. I'm hoping to have a few more members in the next month, so I'm going to increment this up to hopefully we're going to have 40 members by the end of March, and that would be 160 one-to-ones for the chapter. And again, we have some mechanisms We can exchange business cards and do the one-to-one game. We can also have a BNI game. BNI game is a great way to support a lot of these goals. Now, if you're looking for some ideas for different mechanisms to support your goals, the first thing I would say is please meet with your chapter director consultant. Your chapter director consultant is a wealth of information that can definitely help you establish the goals as well as to come up with mechanisms or ideas for supporting those goals. You can also click on this button at the top that's called the Chapter Goal Guide. And here there are some quick ideas for each of the chapter success drivers. For example, we have the one-to-ones. So what are some things that support the one-to-ones? We can, for example, implement the mentoring program. That's a great way, or the business card swap, or play the BNI game, or have a one-to-one contest. So I can highlight that and copy it. Let's say I think that's a good idea, and I want to have a one-to-one contest in March, so I can put that in there. Now, there's also things that, as you're going through, some activities support multiple goals. For example, the BNI game, if your chapter has ever played the BNI game, personally, I love the BNI game. If you're not familiar with the BNI game, what you do is you break the chapter apart into multiple teams, usually between 4 and 8 members per team, 2, 3, 4 teams in the chapter. And you assign a point system to all of the good things that you're trying to promote in the chapter. For example, if you show up on time that week, that's 5 points for your team. If you bring a referral that week, that might be 15 points. If you had a one-to-one that week, that might be 10 points. Let's say you bring a visitor, that might be 25 points. Or maybe if you sponsor a new member to the chapter, that's 100 points. All different point values depending on what it is that you're trying to really promote in your chapter. Then the teams basically compete for who gets the most points. At the end, a lot of chapters decide to have some type of a social, or maybe there's some type of a prize that the team is awarded for winning. But when you're doing things like the BNI game actually supports a lot of the different things that we're doing. So I can take this BNI game and I can make sure that I'm putting it in the mechanism. So this supports CEUs, let's say. It supports visitors. It supports new memberships. It supports the number of members in a chapter. It supports the number of referrals. It also supports the thank you for closed business. And then we're going to run the BNI game in this chapter for a couple of months. So I can take that mechanism and kind of fill out quite a bit of my spreadsheet here. So that's total number of one-to-ones. Very similar for chapter education units. Now for chapter education units, we also are looking to implement that in our region. So we're looking to get to a goal of 1 CEU per member per week. So this very closely mirrors my total number of one-to-ones, except we've never done it before, so we're going to have a slower ramp-up period. But hopefully by the end of the 6 months, we're going to catch up with those numbers. For visitors, we're also hoping to have a goal eventually of 1 visitor per member per month. So eventually we're going to get up, based on the number of members we have, to bringing in quite a few visitors per month. We had a quick question here from Vanessa. She says, are the teams in the BNI game the same every week, or do they change up weekly? Do you play every week or once a month? So usually when I have seen the BNI game done, it is the same teams for, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks. That 6 to 8 week period, the teams remain the same. And then at the end of that 6 to 8 week contest, that's when you would total up those points. And usually you have weekly updates and everything. But I would not switch up the teams every week because that would get incredibly confusing. And I also wouldn't do it too often. It does burn out the concept. So do I have a synopsis of the BNI game? That should be in your if you happen to be a chapter president, that should be in your packet of information. There is a packet that has a whole bunch of things called meeting stimulants, and those meeting stimulants are usually part of the chapter toolkit. If you don't have a login yet, check with your executive director. They may have it either in the documents section in BNI Connect. It might also be available in the download section of bni.com. So does that help, Vanessa? Excellent. Jordan says, can everybody in the chapter view the goals or just those on leadership? By default, all of the members in the chapter can view the chapter goals, but only the leadership team, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, can enter or adjust the chapter goals. So anybody should be able to view them, but only you guys on the leadership team are able to adjust or enter them. Does that help, Jordan? All right, again, looking at the next couple of goals, we have number of members in the chapter and new memberships. Now, this is sorted alphabetically. My recommendation is you may actually want to come down and do the number of members in chapter as one of the first things that you establish, because it does really set the tone for a lot of the other goals that you have. So you can see here, number of members of chapter. We're looking to grow the chapter from what's currently 20 members to 40 members. So this shows our progress along the way. Now, of course, in order to support that, we're going to need new memberships every month. So getting from 20 to 22, I'm saying that we're going to need 3 new members that month because we may have one that leaves along the way. To get from 22 to 25, I said that we need 5 new memberships. 25 to 28 to 30 to 35 to 40. So again, you can, based on what your attrition rate is, and your retention rate, you may want to adjust those numbers to get to your goal number of members. Number of referrals, again, to us, we're looking for 1 referral per member per week. So we've made those very similar to the number of one-to-ones. And finally, the thank you for closed business. So we want to be a $1 million chapter, which means that we have to pass at least $100,000 of business every month. So we've put in a goal of $100,000 in business every month, which hopefully by the end of the year will make us a $1 million chapter. Once you've filled out your goals and your mechanisms, click Save, click OK. Now this will save. It'll leave you on this screen. You can always go back and edit these later. You can adjust them. You can go back and complete them if you only got started on it. And once you're done, you probably want to go back to Operations, take a look at the goals, and then you can view your chapter goals. Now, when you're viewing the chapter goals, it's going to show you the current 6-month period, but of course you can change that if you'd like to. And when I view the chapter goals, the one thing you'll see is not just a goal, but also the actual. So you'll see how you did based on the POMS report that month. Now, unfortunately, up in Antarctica, we have a very lazy vice president. They haven't submitted any POMS reports recently, so these are all showing up as 0. But let me show you a region where this is being used very actively. Debbie says, who is responsible for entering the goals? Generally speaking, that is a leadership team function. So my recommendation is you sit down with your leadership team, your president, your vice president, your secretary treasurer. You guys meet as a leadership team. You sit down together and you establish and enter your chapter goals in together. So, but definitely talk with your director consultant or your executive director. They may have some different ideas in your region. Does that make sense, Debbie? All right, so let me switch over to the United States here. I'm going to switch over to a region that is definitely using these goals. So if I'm going to view the chapter goals for this particular region, and what you'll see is this is the Direct to Success chapter in Tampa. You can see what their long-term vision is they want to increase their membership to 50. They want to focus on the core success drivers and foster a strong educational program. Their mission statement is they're going to do this by ensuring that every BNI member meets their individual goals. Every member will have the opportunity to become E-squared, and the chapter's leadership team will provide mechanisms to ensure that each member knows where they stand in relation to the rest of the chapter and BNI as a whole. You can see that their goals have been set. So for example, they've been looking for 100% attendance. In April, they received 96%, in May 92%, then 96, 93, 98, 93. Their number of one-to-ones, they were shooting for 323. They had an actual of almost 600. They had a goal of 258, and they had an actual of 290. Now, September, they had a goal of 370, and so far they have 134. So these are updated as soon as POMS reports are entered. And you can follow along on a month-by-month basis to see how their goals are along the way. And as I said, any member in the chapter should be able to view the goals, whereas only the leadership team will be able to enter them. Jordan says, can anyone add personal chapter goals? Is there a better idea to collaborate together? So the goals are set, one set of goals per chapter. There is not currently a mechanism for keeping track of individual or personal goals. So it is just one collaborative set of goals for the entire chapter. Does that make sense, Jordan? Excellent. We are at the bottom of the hour. I do want to be very respectful of everybody's time if anybody does need to leave right away. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. But I do also want to open it up for questions for those that can stick around. Please do ask any questions you'd like. They can be on this particular part of BNI Connect or anything else in BNI Connect that you might have a question about. I would be very happy to answer those questions now. While you're thinking up any questions, a couple of reminders. Again, this is being recorded. Will be made available on the support site. Now you can get to the support site by clicking on this question mark. Also, in front of nearly every single function in BNI Connect, if you'd like more information on, let's say, entering the goals, or you'd like to share this with your other leadership team members, click on the question mark right in front of this function, and it will bring you to the help article for that particular function. And you can see there's a step-by-step guide here. I can also go back to the home of the support page, and you'll see the recorded webinars here, as well as, for example, entering chapter goals. It'll also be available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. And a final favor, I would love it if you would give us a like on Facebook, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We do webinar announcements and reminders and tips and tricks and all sorts of things up here on our Facebook site as well. All right, we do have a question up here from Vanessa. She says, in training there was nothing about how the VP enters POMS or where to go. Can I go over that? Absolutely, I can show you that. By the way, we will be doing another webinar coming up in a couple of days. If you go to the support site, our very next webinar is this coming Wednesday, and it's called Leadership Team Tools and Reports. So we're going to be going over how to enter POMS reports. We're going to be going over how to assign the speaker rotation and mentors and all of the leadership team functions. So if you'd like to join us on Wednesday, September 24th at the same time, actually, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We also will have a replay live on Wednesday, October 8th. At noon and 3 p.m. Eastern. All right, but let me show you how to do that. So entering chapter goals. Again, we're going to be entering something, so we want to go to the operations menu, and that's going to be under meeting management. And actually, I need to switch back to my test region so I don't mess up anybody's statistics. So I would go to Antarctica, and I'm going to go to meeting management, and I'm going to click on enter POMS. And again, if you'd like the help article, just click on this question mark here. That will take you to the help article for it. Once I click on Enter POMS, the first thing that I'll see here is any visitors that have been entered by the visitor hosts. And what I need to do is to either approve or reject these visitors for POMS credit. So I can see there's been 3 visitors entered. This visitor visited on the 7th of May. This visitor visited on the 16th of August of July, and this one visited on the 27th. So I need to find out, do I want to accept those into POMS credit? If I want to accept them, I just say yes. If I want to reject the PALMS credit, I can do that. I can also click on the visitor name if I need to edit the visitor information, or I can click if a PALMS report has already been submitted, I can review that PALMS by clicking on that. So once I've made a decision on all of these visitors, I can then click Continue. I choose the date of the meeting. So let's say I'm inputting the PALMS report for yesterday's meeting. I click on Enter PALMS. Now, when I'm in the PALMS, one thing you'll notice is that there's already some data in here. That data is going to be for any of the online slips that were entered by the chapter. Now, I can check that by clicking on the Slips Audit Report. And I can see that this person had entered a referral, and I can see that somebody thanked a visitor for $550 and thank you for closed business. Thank you for closed business is anonymous, so we can't see who did that. And then I would just fill out the rest of the information. So I would take attendance. Let's say that Amy was absent this week and Roger had a substitute and Harvey Keitel has been on medical leave. I can fill out the referrals given, the referrals received that were done on paper. And then when I'm all done, I can put some notes in if I'd like to and click on Submit PALMS. Once I submit this PALMS, it'll give me a quick summary. If I need to edit this, if I made a mistake, I can go back and unlock it if I need to. But other than that, these are now the official statistics, and they are part of the summary PALMS report and all of the other reports in the system. So Vanessa, does that help? Vanessa has a follow-up question. Are only qualified visitors added, or are subs or people that cannot possibly join added and confirmed as visitors? So when your visitor host enters a visitor into the system, so let's say that your visitor host adds a visitor. When they add a visitor that's come to your chapter, they have the opportunity to choose whether or not they're added to the PALMS. Now, we assume that anybody that's added to the PALMS was a qualified visitor. So if you wanted to track subs and guests and maybe members from other chapters, typically they would uncheck that. If they uncheck that, that won't show up for your approval, only if they've checked this off. But that's there so that if somebody accidentally put in somebody that wasn't a qualified visitor, you could then reject that visitor from the PALMS if you knew that they weren't qualified. That helps with things like conversion ratio when it comes to the chapter traffic lights and things like that. Vanessa says, will the training address the columns? I know I'll be addressing that. Very quickly, the columns in the PALMS report. So let me go back and I'm going to review a PALMS report. So I can go back and look at any past PALMS by clicking on View PALMS Summary. I'm going to go and choose a date range, and let's say I want to take a look at this one, so I'm going to click the completed. So PALMS, this is present, absent, late medical substitute. That's the different choices for the attendance column. RGI and RGO. RG stands for referrals given. RGI is referrals given inside versus outside. An inside referral is when two members of the chapter do business with one another. So Vanessa, if you and I are in the same chapter and you needed my services, that would be an inside referral. Now, rather, if I introduce you to one of my friends or family or colleague or anybody else outside of the chapter, that would be an outside referral. So that's inside versus outside. Referrals given, RGI. RRI would be a received referral. So whenever there's a referral situation, two people are involved with that. So if I referred myself to you, that would be an inside referral given for me and an inside referral received for you. V is for visitors, 1 is for one-to-ones, TYFCB is thank you for closed business, and CEU is chapter education units. So does that help out there, Vanessa? All right, let's see. So Kathleen says, okay, so every question I started to type, you have answered. So you're very welcome, Kathleen. All right, let's see. Jordan has a question here, or rather, before I get to that one, Martha has a question. How does the VP delete entries in thank you for closed business? So if you need to, you still have full access to the POMS report. So when you're entering the POMS report, you would just overwrite it. Now, going back, let's say that this particular POMS report, this one was done in error and I need to adjust it. I can always unlock that POMS report, which would allow me to go back and let's say that that's not 550, that was 5,500. I can make an adjustment to that. If it was an online slip, you can still override the number here, or as long as the POMS report is unlocked, the member can go in and adjust their slip. So does that answer your question there, Martha? So how can I clarify? So Martha says, there are entries in my personal thank you for closed business that are duplicates and no one seems to know how to delete them. Okay, so you're talking about slips that you've entered yourself into BNI Connect. Okay, so to adjust those, I'm going to go back to my home screen. So if, let's say I'm going to review my thank you for closed business slips, I can choose the period of time that I want to review for. And I can see that these are all my slips here. So now let's say that one of these was done in error and I want to adjust one of those. That's what you're talking about? So there's two factors involved here. The first of which is you'll notice that we have a POMS status column all the way over here to the right. It will say either completed or draft. Now, if the POMS status is completed, that means that that slip is now locked. I can't do anything with it. What I would have to do first is to ask the vice president to please unlock that POMS report. So they would have to go back to the POMS report, and just as I showed you a second ago, the vice president would have to unlock that particular week. Once they unlock that week, then you can adjust that thank you for closed business slip. To adjust the thank you for closed business slip, you would click on Edit Delete Slips. That'll open up in a new window and it will show you all of the slips that are available for editing or deleting. Now, unfortunately, those ones aren't showing up because those POMs were submitted. But once my VP unlocked that POMs report, they would then show up here. I could then click on Edit, or I could delete it if I needed to. Does that help, Martha? So again, the trick is that the POMS report does need to still be open in order to do that. All right, let's see. Vanessa says, are CEUs auto-entered? No, CEUs, you do have to manually submit your CEUs. So even if you attend a training or this webinar, the event will show up on your profile, but you do need to submit your CEU slip. So everybody, right now, go into BNI Connect, click on Submit CEU Slip, and make sure that you give yourself a 1 credit for this BNI webinar today. Click Submit, and that will show up in your POMs for next week. All right, we have a couple more questions. Jordan says, who exactly should be processing the POMS reports? Jordan, for that one, I ask you to please, please, please talk with your director, consultant, or executive director. So they different regions do things slightly differently. In our region, our vice president does that. However, I know that there are some other regions where, because the vice president has so many responsibilities, that somebody else in the chapter helps out with that. So please do check with your director consultant for that. Okay? Jordan says, being a new chapter, what goals should we focus on first? Again, I hate to keep pushing you off, but that's a great one-to-one to have with your director consultant. Personally, it really depends on the size of your chapter and what things are happening in your chapter. My focus has always been, as a member, as a director consultant, is to make sure that we're focusing on increasing our membership, because that will drive a lot of the other things. If we have members that are specifically in empty contact spheres, they'll have a hard time getting referrals, and they may end up leaving the chapter. So filling people's contact spheres and growing the membership has always been one of my focuses. After that, I tend to focus on one-to-ones, because one-to-ones build the chapter relationships. They make the chapter stronger. And then they also, when you're doing a lot of one-to-ones, that helps to drive referrals as well. So again, that's my opinion, but please, please talk to your director consultant, your executive director about that. Debbie has a question. She says, where do we find the information online about upcoming webinars? So there's 3 places you can find the upcoming webinars. Again, the first of which is click on the question mark. You'll see the support site. And the very first thing that you'll see on the support site is upcoming webinars. So I have all of the webinars planned out for both September and October. So our very next webinar, again, is the Leadership Team Tools and Reports next Wednesday, followed by Maintaining Your Chapter Website for Chapter Webmasters on Thursday. And then we run through the entire series again in October. So each month we do this entire series. So please do. A good referral for me is to recommend these to your other chapter members and to the members in your region if you're a director consultant. Now, I did mention there is another place you can find them. There's actually 2 other places you can find them. You can find them by going to My Network and looking through your regional events. You should see all of your regional events listed there, as well as the webinars. You'll also find them on your regional website. So click up here where it says Regional Website. That will take you to your regional website. Click on the event calendar, and you will see all of the events listed there as well, along with all your other regional training events. So, for example, here is the BNI Connect Maintaining Your Chapter website and the Leadership Team Tools and Reports, and you'll have a registration link in there. You'll also see them on the BNI America site. So we have these everywhere, bniamerica.com. And on the event calendar, you should see all of these webinars listed here as well. All right, does that help, Debbie? All right, so Jordan says, can anyone participate in these webinars? Yes, absolutely. These webinars are open to anybody. Obviously, if you're not a BNI member, you won't be able to do any of these functions because you have to be a member of BNI in order to have access to BNI Connect. Also, with the things like the leadership team tools, they won't be able to, like, for example, I just showed you guys how to enter a POMS report, but unless you are a vice president or you're on the leadership team, you simply will not be able to do that function. So you do need to have permissions to do certain things, but we don't check the roles before they come on a webinar or anything. So if that makes sense. Jordan says, when you submit anything in BNI Connect, it gives you the option to save or submit. How do you go back and find the slip saved and not submitted? So that's just really a naming convention. But if you want to see all the slips that have been saved or submitted, just go to your review reports. So these will show you all of these. For example, the referrals received, or the referrals given, And again, completed means that it has been fully submitted and accepted, whereas draft means that it's still kind of in the saved status but not submitted yet. Let's see. Susan says, I just entered a CEU and hit submit. A message came up, important, and disappeared so fast. That message says, important. Please remember to celebrate this activity at your weekly chapter meeting. So one of the things with online slips is that we don't necessarily have to fill out a piece of paper anymore at the chapter meeting, but you absolutely want to stand up and talk about your activity from the week. So you want to talk about the referrals that you passed, even if you passed them online. You want to talk about the one-to-ones and the CEUs and the thank you for closed business. So it's just a reminder to please announce that activity at your weekly chapter meeting. Hopefully that helps, Susan. You are very welcome. That was the last question that I had on the list. Does anybody else have any questions? Again, I love answering questions. Supporting BNI Connect is what I do all day, every day, so always happy to answer questions. Martha said, first webinar, awesome. You are so welcome. Thank you for the compliment. And please, honestly, we had about 30 or 40 people on the webinar today. We have the capacity to hold about 1,000 people per webinar. I would love it if you helped me to promote these webinars to other members in your region, in your chapters. Again, that would be a great referral for me, is to pack the house on the webinars and get the information out of our heads and into yours. Excellent. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here today. I look forward to hopefully seeing you on a future webinar. Have an absolutely wonderful week, everyone, and happy connecting.